Welcome to Thursday Thoughts, your weekly dose of real, honest conversation on all things personal growth. These are the chats Lucy and I love having every week over on Instagram. They're unfiltered, unedited, and always rooted in practical tools and a dose of inspiration. Let's dive in. Good morning.
Hi, love. Well, I'll let you start because this one was your idea.
Okay, so today I thought we'd talk about boundaries because we all need boundaries in our lives. Good morning.
From Austria. Good morning from Austria.
Good morning. Boundaries is something which I notoriously used to be terrible at and say yes to everything, do everything that everybody ever wanted me to. And obviously having a family, you have got to do stuff perhaps you don't really want to do. But if you don't have good boundaries in place, you can end up feeling totally drained of energy. You can feel resentful because you're doing things for other people that you know that you don't perhaps necessarily want to be doing. But ultimately, it just drains you. It completely can make you feel very wiped out and exhausted. So it is important to try and notice, I think, first of all, where you are giving your energy away when actually you don't want to be, either don't want to be, but also secondly, where you don't need to be giving it away. If you're a people pleaser like I have been majority of my life, then obviously we just want to give. If you're a person who just wants to give, you just want to give yourself to everybody, but it just doesn't work well because we feel exhausted, and more than that, totally pissed off that we are not being true to what we want to be doing or who we want to be. So I suppose this morning it's really just about thinking about that, where we might be giving our energy away, where we can actually put some boundaries in place to protect our energy. And when we do that, we can, we're operating at a much happier, more energized place, because ultimately that's it feels good. It's all about how it feels good. So for me, I've been putting in lots of boundaries, more and more so recently than ever before, I think, particularly in terms of what I want to do, how I want to be spending my time. And I used to be very bad at saying no to stuff. I used to kind of turn up to everything. I want to go to everything. Now I'm very, very good at saying, nah, I don't need, I need to rest, or I don't want to do that. I'd rather be doing this. So there we go. That's kind of in a nutshell what I thought we could talk about today.
Holly, can you give some more examples? Like you said, you've been setting a lot more boundaries lately. What are some examples of those? Apart from you just said saying no to things, but are there any others that you can?
So in terms of how I spend my time, so particularly going and being invited to go and meet with friends or go to something, quite often I'll be invited to go and do something with friends in the evenings, particularly during if it's during the week. And I will inevitably say no, because during the week, I really do like to go to bed be in bed at a decent time. Yeah. I also know that if I go out, and actually I've got very good at doing this as well, people might be having a drink, like an alcoholic drink, and I'm trying to be much more intentional of when I will drink alcohol, because it just doesn't agree with me anymore. So I still do sometimes like to go, I do like to go and have a drink, but actually if it's during the week, but even sometimes if it's not, I now can say no. So I went to this festival, for example, last week. It was brilliant. I was guiding breathwork. And there was drinks available in the evenings. One evening, there was amazing DJs, Heartbreakers Club. They were incredible. I didn't have a drink all day, all night. And I was totally fine with that. I was dancing, and lots of people were. And in the past, I would have felt need or a pressure to get involved. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm totally fine without having a drink. I'm totally also there. You know, after there was often like people sitting around the campfire till late and so. And actually, when it got dusk, I just took myself off to my tent, quite happy. Took myself to bed. Again, I just put those boundaries around. No, I need to have some time away from all these people. I need to rest. I know that's what I need. And in the past, I probably would have worried, oh my goodness, I'm being really antisocial. What are they going to think if I'm not being included? But actually, I was like, no, I need to have this space and this time away from people because that's how I refuel and recharge my energy. And it's important that I do that. Yeah. So I think a big part of this is knowing yourself, knowing how you operate best, and then giving yourself what you need in order to operate best. And I'm not, I'm sounding like a complete recluse. And but for me, that, for example, that festival last week was so wonderful. But I was with people. Yeah. You're eating 3 meals a day with a group of people, with people all day. I knew that I needed to go and have quiet time away from the people because that's what I need. So it's about just creating that space for yourself to do that.
Totally. And one thing, I actually just want to, someone's just asked a question. Anna, hi love, has said, how do you say no? Do you make something up or do you say a flat no? I don't want to be rude. And I think actually this is such a, I'm glad you've asked this question because I think this is such a big part of boundaries. Ultimately, boundaries are for us. And, one thing that it's important to say is that it is up to us to implement our boundaries. So if someone steps over a boundary, that's on us, not on them. And in answer to Anna's question, I think ultimately we have to get comfortable with saying no. And also, you say you don't want to be rude. Well, the truth is that if and when you start setting boundaries, inevitably there are going to be, raised eyebrows or, somebody might feel a bit put out or somebody might feel a bit irritated. But that is not your responsibility or your problem. That is on them. If you choose to set a boundary for yourself, for your life, then anyone who feels pissed off or annoyed, I'm really sorry to say it, but that is their problem. And, I've heard many people say before, it's like, it is none of your business how other people feel about it. Like you have every right to set a boundary. And so I know it's not easy to say no, but I think, you are allowed to just be completely honest. And like, for example, the drinking example is quite a good one. If you decide to take yourself off for an early night when everyone stays out drinking during the week, for example, or whenever, like, it's okay to say, do you know what? I just feel I prefer myself when I'm not drinking. I feel better when I'm not drinking. I'm trying not to drink during the week. Thanks for understanding. You can say it in a gentle way without being rude. And ultimately, I think part of the problem, particularly for women, is that we are so used to being people pleasers that we think that setting boundaries is rude. And we get so worried that we're going to upset somebody. But that is just something that I think we have to learn to tolerate. Because if you don't learn to tolerate that and you continue to not set boundaries and you continue to do things that you don't want to do or, whatever that may look like, then it is your life that is going to be negatively impacted. So it's really a choice. And again, it's not necessarily it's not necessarily easy, but that doesn't mean we should do it. And I absolutely relate to that. Like, it can be incredibly difficult to say no to people, family, friends, whoever it may be. But we've all got to live our lives. You've got to live and let live. And if somebody gets pissed off or annoyed with you, then again, that is on them. It's as simple as that.
I will only ever recommend brands that I know, love and use myself. And one of those is Ancient and Brave. Honestly, they've become part of my daily habits. The very first thing I do every morning is pour myself a big glass of water with their true hydration in it. It feels like such a simple ritual, but it really sets me up for the day. And I know I'm properly rehydrating with their blend of electrolytes and minerals, especially before I exercise, which I always do in the morning. Then later on, when I make my coffee, I stir in their true collagen powder into the coffee. Now, it blends in straight away, no fuss, there's no taste, and collagen is something we naturally lose as we age, but it's so important for our skin, joints, and overall vitality. Now, I'll be honest, Ancient and Brave may cost a little more than some of the tubs you'll spot on supermarket shelves, but the difference is you're getting the highest quality ingredients, sourced with integrity and tested to a higher standard, and absolutely no nasties added. That's why I trust them and why I think they're worth every penny. And because I want you to be able to try them out for yourself, I've got a special offer for you. As a listener of this podcast, you can get 20% off your very first order. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes and pop in the code POLYW20 at checkout. They've got more than just collagen and hydration too. They've got creatine, they've got blends, supplements. So it's a perfect chance to explore their range and make the most of that 20% off.
Yeah. I agreed. Anna said, I'm worried that people will stop inviting me. I think, Anna, don't worry about that, because if they're your friends, they will invite you. And I think I do actually think being honest is a really good way to go.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends know that I'm super, during the week, I'm super early bird. I like to go to bed early. And I think, they will still invite you. And maybe just acknowledge that. It's like, don't stop inviting me. But for now it's a no. I think that's fine. And if they're your friends, they will understand. And if they don't understand, then actually maybe, they're not your people for now. But I think people do understand. And I think the more that we honor our own boundaries, the more respect people give you, actually, because it's like, well, gosh, she's doing it. Maybe I can do that too. Maybe I can say no, because we could, and I think as we get older, yes, you want to live, I also like saying yes. Can I just say that? And I think sometimes it's good to say yes and say yes to things which are out of your comfort zone, because that's kind of pushing yourself in a slightly different way. So it is good to say yes. But
that's a different thing, isn't it?
It's a totally different thing. Yeah. It's a totally different thing. This is about honouring you and what you want to do, what you feel is within your, it's honouring your energy more than anything. I think that's it. And it's the same as with anything. So, it might even be with a conversation that you're having. Someone might be, we talk about this a lot, talking about subjects that again are draining your energy. Again, it's like, put that boundary in place, walk away, say, change the subject. Or if you're listening to something which is triggering you, again, it's up to you to put that boundary in place. Like, oh my gosh, this is not good for me. I don't want to be listening to this. This is triggering something within me. Again, turn it off, change the channel, walk away. Honor what is right for you in that moment. Because it's, as Lucy said, as you said, Lucy, it's totally up to us to put these boundaries in place. If we have very loose boundaries, we only have ourselves to blame. There's no one else who's going to do it for you.
Completely. I love the example of conversations. I think this is a really, really, really good example, actually. And I think a lot of us find ourselves in that situation. And for my audience of single women, it's a really good thing to think about. Like, it is okay. When people start asking you intrusive questions about being single, why you're single, why you're not having kids, or whatever it is, you are allowed to say that you don't want to discuss that. And again, you don't have to be arsy, you don't have to be rude. You can simply say, I'm really sorry, but I'm not comfortable talking about this. Anyway, where are you off to on holiday next week? Do you know what I mean? It's like, you are allowed to do that. We're so afraid. We're so fucking scared of pissing people off. Why? why are we so afraid of it? You know, why are we so afraid of sort of saying the wrong thing? Or it's crazy. And I find that the older I get, the less I really give a shit, because I think the older you get, the more you start valuing your peace. And as you and I talk about a lot, your energy, you know, it's just, but again, going back to the sort of single example, the single conversation as an example, if somebody is asking you questions or going down a road that you are not comfortable with, you can very simply state that I am not comfortable talking about this. Do you mind if we change the subject? And if you literally say that, if you say I'm not comfortable talking about this, can we change the subject? It's very difficult for somebody to come back to that. You know, it's very difficult for somebody to continue down that path if you've actually said outright. You know, you can say it in a gentle way. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be angry. It doesn't have to be defensive. It can just be, really sorry, I'm not comfortable talking about this. You know, let's change the subject. Or, and also the other thing I wanted to add about boundaries is, you know, we're not necessarily just talking about boundaries for other people in our lives. We also have to put boundaries in for ourselves. And we talked about, I can't remember whether it was last week or the week before, knowing ourselves. And you mentioned this, Polly, but it's about kind of, you know, we have to set boundaries for ourselves in order to make sure that we're living a life that makes us feel good. So early nights is a really good example. Like maybe you have to set a boundary for yourself that, you know what, during the week, I go to bed by X time, whatever it is. You know, during the week, I only drink on Friday nights or whatever it may be. I think it's really important to set boundaries for yourself. And the thing is that when you set boundaries for yourself and you actually stick to them, what that does is it cultivates confidence in yourself. It cultivates a trust in yourself. You know, you can trust yourself because you know that you keep your word to yourself. It's like all about integrity, isn't it? Which is so incredibly important. And that is such a good way of just feeling more confident in your own decisions. And, you know, I totally get that going back to the kind of other people thing, it can be so hard to have those tricky conversations. But what is the fucking worst that can happen? What is the worst that can happen if you decline an invitation to something or whatever it may be? And actually going back to, you know, Anna's saying, I'm worried I won't be invited again. Well, if you say no to friends, to something that you don't want to do, and they never invite you to anything again, well, you've got to ask, are these actually the people I want to hang out with? Because if somebody is a true friend, if they get arsy about you not coming to something and then don't ever ask you to anything, well, I personally wouldn't want to be friends with that person anyway. And a good true friend is not going to suddenly exclude you from everything just because you said no. I mean, I think, you know, I've become much more much better at saying no to things in the last few years, because I've just got to know myself better. And, you know, I've done, as you know, Polly, we talk about this all the time. You and I have been doing that inner work. And so I've got to a stage where I will just not tolerate any longer spending time doing things that don't make me feel good and that I don't want to be doing. And I think that if people in your life drift out of your life when you start setting boundaries, well, that's kind of told you what you need to know. Because the people that are meant to be in your life, the people that truly care about you and truly respect you and love you, will respect your boundaries and will be okay with them. And even if initially they're a bit like, ooh, a bit huffy or a bit annoyed that you're not going to something, fine, let them feel that. But, you know, I've done it before. I've said no to things before where I obviously won't mention what or who, but I said no to something, to an invitation from a friend. This was a couple of years ago. And I knew that this person was annoyed with me. I knew that they were annoyed. I could tell. But because they are a very good friend of mine and they've been in my life for a long time, they got over it. You know, they got over it and we're fine.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Yeah.
So Anna's said, you know, we're so afraid because as women, we are conditioned to put people first and give everything to everyone. I'm trying so hard to change. And this is, you know, a massive issue with us, with so many of us. And I think particularly as we get into midlife, we often have so much coming at us. You know, for me and for people, a lot of people who I work with, you know, got families, you know, your parents are getting older, you are you know, you're in your career, you're doing all your things, you know, you've got a lot of people wanting a lot from you. And, you know, particularly if you have kids, you know, I 5 o'clock on Saturday, I got a message from my daughter who was working going, can you drive me, you know, 40 minutes away to this party tonight in a couple of hours? And I was like, no, you know, she was guilting me so much to make me do this. And actually I was like, no, if you had given me forward planning, if it was a really important party and I knew you wanted to go to, then yes, I would have done, but not last minute. I'm not dropping everything to do this for you. So I think, you know, we want to do everything for everyone. We are natural caregivers, a lot of us as women, and we want to do stuff for people. We are often the ones who carry that emotional load, that we carry that sort of, you know, everything for everybody else. However, we also have to put ourselves at that top of that list. We have to put ourselves first, because ultimately we'll burn out if we don't. And I see this again and again and again with so many women. They are completely burnt out. They are not putting themselves first. Their boundaries are not in place. And it's no good for anybody. You know, the ripple effects of that are disastrous. However, when we start to put ourselves first above everybody else, then we are going to show up much stronger for everyone. And then the ripples, you know, ripple out. And, you know, in terms of being a role model to others, you know, and particularly to younger people, it's really important that they see it, particularly younger women. It's important that they see us look after ourselves and protect ourselves and put those boundaries in place, because otherwise they're going to be doing exactly the same. And it's not it is not healthy.
So true.
So, yeah.
So true. And the point you made about, I couldn't agree more. When you start putting yourself first, and therefore you're not depleted and burnt out and run down and overwhelmed, you do subsequently show up better for the people that you love. And ultimately, that's, you know, that you're then in a position to be able to give much more and be much more present. I think that's one of the main things to remember about boundaries, is if you continue to not put boundaries in place, and you continue to, you know, do things you don't want to do, like say yes to things you don't want to go to, whatever it is, you become depleted and resentful. And that then shows in your interactions with the people that you care about. So when you flip it and think, well, if I'm true to myself and I honor what I know I need and what is right for me, then ultimately you are going to be a better friend, a better sister, a better mother, a better daughter, whatever it is. And actually, I just wanted to also add, I think boundaries with family is something that people can find really, really hard. Really hard. And I relate to that. But again, we have to be firm in our decisions. We have to be firm in our boundaries, and remember that, you know, you sometimes hear people saying, oh, you know, they totally overstepped a boundary. Well, if somebody is overstepping a boundary, that is because you are letting them overstep that boundary. That is not on them, that is on you. And I know it can be really hard, particularly perhaps with family members. But this is, again, it's one of those, you might have to go through a little bit of discomfort to come out the other side. And, you know, the one thing about family is that you can kind of get away with stuff more with family, can't you? Because they are your family, and you know, hopefully you know that they will always be there for you. So although it can feel hard, although it can feel uncomfortable, you know, do it anyway. You've got to do what's best for you. I think people get something I talk about a lot in my community and, you know, among single women, there's this sort of idea of being selfish if you put yourself first. And it's just, this narrative has just got to fucking go. It's such a load of bollocks. We've been conditioned to think that we have to think about ourselves last, and particularly, Polly, for obviously you're married with kids, and I'm the opposite. And I think it's even more so for women who are married with kids. But for all of us, like, we're so used to just feeling like, well, I come bottom of the list. That's just the way that it goes. That's just, no, it's not. Men don't bloody do it.
No.
Men don't automatically put themselves to the bottom of the list. They don't.
No.
And nor should we.
And, that's why I'm so passionate about, carving out time and space for yourself. And I appreciate it. If you're caring for somebody, whether that is a relative, a family member, a child, whatever, and you are in that role, there is an expectation that you are there, because actually if that person is relying on you, then obviously they are relying on you, and it's very hard to say no to stuff. But so I think, what we need to do in that way is, yes, we need to have our boundaries. Yes, sometimes those boundaries are going to be tricky to manage if someone is actually really relying on you. And I'm thinking here of, someone, a sick relative, for example, or it can be really, really bloody tough. So that is why we need to make sure we are fueled and our cup is full, and we have created a space and time for ourselves at some point in that day to re-energize, to give ourselves what we need, so that we can then give people what they need. So
Exactly.
it's about having that awareness of, like, I need to look after myself first. You can still give to others in the way that you need to, but making sure that you are giving to yourself first and foremost. So if that means getting up a little bit earlier, giving yourself what you need, or maybe that might mean giving yourself a bit of extra sleep, I don't know, work it out. What do you need? What is going to make you operate to your best during the day, so that you can then give out your energy to others?
Yeah. And particularly, I know someone who has mentioned, caring for a parent. This is a very, very tricky one, but ultimately you cannot care for someone properly if you are not putting yourself first and caring for yourself first. It really is as simple as that. If you are not taking care of yourself and taking the time that you need, and look, I don't know what the situation is from this message, but if carers, it's incredibly hard. But you cannot care for somebody unless you are first caring for yourself, because you're just not going to have the energy to do it. So, and presumably you don't need to be with them 24/7. So what time can you take for yourself that you need in order to replenish your own resources to enable you to be able to care for that person? I get that it's incredibly hard, but even though it is hard, you still have to learn how to put those boundaries in place. Because if you're just giving to somebody that you're looking after, there is going to come a point when you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Whereas if you put those boundaries in now, start taking care of yourself, then apart from anything else, you're going to be less resentful, and you're going to be a lot more effective in that role of caring for a parent, whoever it may be.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that it is hard. There's no denying that.
And it often goes against our natural inclination, which makes it even more hard. But the more that we practice putting those boundaries in place, saying no, giving ourselves what we need, the easier it becomes, without a doubt. And you just start to notice how, when you give yourself what you need, how you just show up better for everybody. And for me, I know, I felt depleted for years, doing everything for everybody, not giving myself what I need. And that's when I become snappy, irritable, not particularly nice to be around. And it just doesn't work. So it's learning, what do you need? And then you really can show up better. And then you're in a better position to put those boundaries in place. I've really noticed that with my kids. I can stay calm. I can keep that boundary. And not, kids need boundaries. Some, kids, particularly young adults, they sometimes need really firm boundaries. And if you the more, you know, they know that when I start to give in, then they'll just start taking the piss a little bit more. So it's really important that you can feel strong and solid in that boundary. So
totally.
yes, exactly. Put your oxygen mask on first. Pour from your own cup first. All of those things are so important. Exactly.
Well, it's 9 on the dot. That won't be for some reason. Anyway, hopefully this is useful in some way.
I hope so.
We'll be back next week.
Yep. All right, my love.
Lots of love, babe.
Have a
Have a
good
good
week.
day.
Bye. 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 Bye.